I stood in my backyard with the snow up to my calves, the wooden handle of the shovel cold enough to bite through my gloves, when the stranger's whisper returned like ice sliding under my skin. "When your husband leaves, don't touch the snow in your yard." My jaw set. I felt my back teeth meet. Something inside me that had been shaking for weeks went perfectly still. Greg's tire tracks cut two dark lines through the fresh powder, leading out of the driveway at 11:40 p.m. the night before. He had taken the large blue suitcase, the laptop, and the folder from the top drawer. The house felt larger now, the rooms echoing in a way they hadn't since Jacob died. Near the back fence, under the old maple, sat a slight mound the new snow had tried to hide. The snow there looked almost blue in the weak January light, packed differently than the rest of the yard. I raised the shovel. The metal edge hovered 6 inches above the surface. One push and I would know. Then her voice came again. Low, urgent, the way someone speaks when they have already paid the price for talking. I lowered the shovel slowly. My shoulders dropped. I hadn't realized I'd been holding them up for months. I left the yard untouched. But I need to go back. Let me tell you how a 53-year-old woman ended up standing in her own backyard in Indianapolis holding a shovel at 8:12 a.m. on a Tuesday, smiling faintly at the snow like it had just handed her the last piece of a puzzle she never wanted to solve. Every morning for 14 years I followed the same quiet path. I woke at 5:50 a.m., made coffee in the same blue mug Jacob bought me in 2017, and drove to the Sunrise Diner on Meridian Street. Booth 6. The one with the cracked red vinyl seat that faced the plain white wall. Coffee black. 2 eggs over easy with the yolks barely set. 1 slice of wheat toast, butter on the side. Darlene, who had worked that counter since 2004, stopped writing my order in 2018. She simply set the plate down, refilled the cup without asking and moved on. I liked that silence. After Jacob's death, it was the only thing that still felt honest. I kept his rose garden alive behind the house on Oakmont Lane. Not well. The bushes were stubborn and reached in odd directions, just like he did when he was alive. I pruned them every March 17th, his birthday, even if the cuts were never quite right. I talked to the plants sometimes, at first only in my head, then out loud while the neighbors were at work. Then I stopped caring who heard. I volunteered at the Oak Hills Senior Center every Thursday afternoon, helping seniors sort through medical bills and insurance forms. I brought cookies from the Kroger on 86th Street, the ones with the soft centers. I never told them I used to do this for a living. I simply sat with them at the long folding tables and showed them how to read the fine print. I left $5 on the counter at the diner every Tuesday for Earl the mailman. He had a bad knee from a fall in 2019 and still walked all 127 houses on his route without complaint. Small kindnesses kept the days from feeling completely empty. Jacob died on September 14, 2021. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. He weighed 127 pounds at the end. The last thing he said to me was, "Don't become the person who looks for shadows in every corner again." I promised him I wouldn't. I kept that promise for 2 years and 7 months. Then Greg appeared. He was the contractor who replaced the roof after the hailstorm in April 2022. He showed up on time, gave me a fair quote of $8,472, and didn't fill the silence with empty condolences when he saw Jacob's photos on the mantel. 6 months later he asked me to dinner at the Italian place on 82nd. I said yes because the house had grown too quiet and his presence made the rooms feel used again. He learned exactly how I took my coffee. He learned I preferred the left side of the bed. He learned the precise way I liked the throw pillows arranged on the couch. 2 vertical, 1 horizontal. For a while it felt like being known. The first time I paid for a stranger's groceries was Tuesday, October 29, 2024. Kroger on 86th Street. The woman in front of me had a small basket, 1 gallon of 2% milk, a loaf of white bread, peanut butter, 2 boxes of macaroni and cheese, and a single banana. Her card declined 3 times. She was around 40, dark circles under her eyes, a fading bruise the color of old wine on her left wrist. The cashier looked uncomfortable. The line behind me grew restless. I stepped forward and tapped my card. $91.42. The woman turned fast, the way people do when they expect to be punished for needing help. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I know." She studied my face. Then she leaned in close enough that I smelled her shampoo, something green and cheap from the dollar store. Her fingers closed around my wrist. Not tightly, just enough to hold. "When your husband leaves," she breathed, the words barely louder than the hum of the freezers, "don't touch the snow in your yard." She let go, left the groceries on the belt, and walked out into the parking lot without looking back. I stood there holding the receipt. The paper was still warm from the printer. The cashier asked if I was all right. He nodded. I wasn't. That night at the kitchen table I told Greg while we ate baked chicken and rice. He laughed and speared a piece of broccoli with his fork. "Probably on something," he said. "People say crazy stuff when they're tweaking." I laughed with him. But something in my chest quietly folded shut, like a letter being put back in its envelope. The small changes began after that night. He moved my laptop to the high shelf in the study, so you don't strain your shoulder reaching up. He started bringing the mail in himself and sorting it at the table. He suggested we cancel the landline because nobody uses those anymore, Becca. Each request sounded like care. Each one removed one more piece of my independence. I told myself I was being ungrateful. I told myself the grief had made me suspicious of kindness. I told myself many things. Then came the night I woke at 2:17 a.m. to the sound of the back door opening. I lay perfectly still under the covers. The hinges gave the smallest squeak, the one I'd meant to oil for months. I heard boots on the frozen ground. Low. Careful. Someone trying to be quiet and almost succeeding. 43 minutes later the door closed again. From the kitchen window I watched Greg standing near the back fence with a shovel. He wasn't digging. He paced the area, checked his phone, took 2 photos of the ground, then smoothed the snow back into place with the flat side of the blade. I made his coffee the next morning the same way I always did. My hand stayed steady. The kind of steady that comes right before something irreversible. The escalations arrived faster after that. First came the encroachment. He rearranged the living room one afternoon while I was at the senior center. Margaret. No, Jacob's green reading chair, the one with the worn armrest where he sat every evening, was moved to the garage. "It was falling apart, Becca," he said when I asked. It wasn't. It was 14 years of evenings spent together. But I said nothing. He moved my medication bottles to a high cabinet. He began scheduling my doctor appointments without asking. He installed a baby monitor in the bedroom, just in case you need me during the night. I rationalized every change. I told myself this is what people who care do. I told myself I was lucky to have someone who noticed. Then the isolation began. Darlene from the diner called twice in 1 week. Greg told her I was resting and not feeling well. He never mentioned the calls. I only learned 3 weeks later when I finally went back and she asked why I had disappeared. Earl the mailman stopped coming to the door. Greg had placed a new mailbox at the curb. "Easier for everyone," he explained. The director at the Oak Hills Senior Center left a voicemail asking why I had missed 4 Thursdays in a row. I hadn't known I missed them. Greg had called and said I was having some cognitive confusion and needed time off. One by one the small threads that connected me to my life were cut. Each cut was small enough to seem reasonable. My old instincts began to wake on December 11th. It was an envelope from First National Bank on Commerce Avenue. Already opened. The seal cut cleanly with a letter opener. Inside was a bank statement and a yellow post-it stuck to it. A phone number and 4 words in Greg's handwriting. "Call title transfer." I sat at the kitchen table with that post-it between my fingers. Something I had put to sleep when Jacob got sick opened its eyes. The part of me that had spent 21 years investigating financial exploitation for the Indiana Attorney General's office. The part that noticed gaps between what people said and what the paper showed. I put the post-it back exactly as I found it. I made Greg tea that evening. Asked about his day. And after he went to bed at 10:32 p.m., he began. Karen. No, Greg left for a supposed work trip to Terre Haute on Thursday, December 19th. He kissed my forehead at the door. Don't forget your pills, Becca. I watched his truck turn the corner onto Birchwood Drive. I waited 47 minutes. Then I went to the study. I started with the filing cabinet that used to be Jacob's. It smelled of old paper and the faint trace of the hand lotion Greg used. The lock had been picked. I could tell by the tiny scratches. Layer 1, Financial. I found statements for 3 accounts I had never opened. 47 unauthorized withdrawals between $2,137 and $4,892. Always just under the $5,000 reporting threshold. Total moved. $217,438.62. The dates formed a pattern. Every withdrawal happened on days I had been at the senior center or the diner. Layer 2, Legal Documents. A durable power of attorney dated October 31, 2024. 2 days after the woman in Kroger. My signature appeared on page 4. Except my capital R has a distinct loop. These RS had none. I checked 31 signatures across 14 documents. All the same mistake. Layer 3, Insurance and Property. The life insurance policy beneficiary changed from Jacob's sister's children to Greg's brother. The change was dated November 3, 2024. The house title was in process of transfer to a trust called Oakmont Holdings LLC. Incorporated November 12. Registered agent. Derek Hansen. Greg's cousin. Layer 4, Personal. In the bottom drawer I found printed emails between Greg and someone named Michelle's sister. The last message was dated December 2nd. The snow will cover it until spring. By then the house will be in our name. I put the last folder down. I aligned its edges perfectly with the corner of the desk. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank it standing at the sink while looking at Jacob's roses through the window. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From recognition. The man who had learned to make my coffee exactly right had been planning this since before he ever fixed the roof. I washed the glass. Dried it. Put it away. Then I went back and kept reading until 4:11 a.m. Sunday night he made dinner. Pasta. We sat at the table. He talked about traffic on I-65. Then he said, Becca, I've been thinking. This house is too big for you now. What if we looked at a nice facility? Somewhere with people your age and nurses on site. I repeated the word slowly. A facility. He leaned forward. You left the stove on last week. You forgot your pills twice. You left the back door unlocked at night. None of those things had happened. He had done each one himself. I saw the entire structure in that moment. I said nothing. My hands stayed completely still under the table. The pills changed 2 days later. My blood pressure medication, 10 milligrams lisinopril, small white oval tablets I had taken 4,015 times, suddenly appeared rounder, slightly different shade of white. I palmed one, drove to the Walgreens on Park Avenue and had it tested. Low-dose sedative. Enough to make a 53-year-old widow seem unsteady and confused. That was the moment the last restraint broke. I called Raymond Velez on December 23rd. He answered on the second ring. Becca. I need your help, Ray. Tell me everything. Over the next 17 days the machinery moved. Ray contacted Agent Diane Morrow at the FBI's Financial Crimes Branch in Indianapolis. She opened a file within 48 hours. My attorney, Paul Whitfield, filed an emergency petition to void the power of attorney. Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic document examiner with 23 years' experience, examined the 31 signatures and wrote a 19-page report that ended with one sentence. The questioned signatures were produced by a different hand. I had installed a small recorder in the study the day after the post-it. 83 audio files. Every late-night conversation. Every call to his cousin. All timestamp. They arrested Greg on January 8th. I sat in the green chair when the doorbell rang at 11:45 a.m. The house still smelled faintly of the lemon cake he had baked that morning. Karen, no. Greg opened the door. Then came the voices, raised low and professional. Agent Morrow stating they had a warrant. The sound of 4 pairs of boots on the hardwood. The screen door, the one Greg had fixed, opening and closing. Greg appeared in the doorway to the living room. His face went the color of old paper. Becca, what did you do? I was drinking my coffee. The cup felt steady in my hands. The desperation cycle began exactly as the master prompt predicted. Denial first, longest. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. The accounts were for us. For our future. Deflection. You went through my things. That's a violation of my privacy. Minimization. It was temporary. I was going to put it all back. You know I would have. Counterattack. I'll tell them you're confused. I'll tell them you signed everything willingly. Who are they going to believe? Bargaining. We can work this out between us. No lawyers. No police. Please. Threats. You'll die alone in this house just like Jacob. Nobody will come. Begging shortest. I have nowhere else. Becca. Please. I looked at him and said only one sentence. I've known for 83 days. Then I read the clinical summary. You changed the beneficiary on the life insurance 6 days after the woman in Kroger warned me. You forged my signature 31 times across 14 documents. You moved $217,438.62 through accounts opened in my name. You were transferring the house to a shell company. You replaced my medication with sedatives. And you buried Michelle in my backyard under the snow and thought I would never look. Pause. I'm not doing this to you. You did this to yourself. I just kept the records. They offered me the chance to push for the maximum sentence. I chose measured consequences instead. Full restitution of every cent. $5,000 per month for 68 months. A signed confession for the civil record. A 500-foot restraining order from this house, this street, and Jacob's grave at St. Catherine's. The criminal charges would remain open, suspended. One missed payment and they would activate. Ray stood by the window afterward. That's all. That's all, Ray. Greg was given 1 hour to pack. I sat in Jacob's green chair and listened to him move through the house. Drawers opening. Hangers sliding. Suitcase zipper. Footsteps on the stairs. The screen door closing for the last time. The engine starting. The sound fading down Oakmont Lane. Then silence. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in months. Not the empty kind. The settled kind. My hip still aches every morning. The fall down the basement stairs on December 27th wasn't an accident. The doctors at St. Luke's say the damage to the joint is permanent. Some lessons should leave marks. Otherwise you might forget them. Every Saturday I visit St. Catherine's Memorial Garden, row 7, plot 12. Jacob Michael Langford, 1968 to 2021. He made everything grow. I told him I broke the promise. A cardinal landed on the stone last week. Bright red against gray. Stayed for 9 seconds then flew. I know it was just a bird. I stayed another hour anyway. That was 14 months ago. Greg lives in a small apartment in Dayton, Ohio. 2 jobs. He makes the $5,000 payment on the first of every month. He has never missed one. He has 54 months left. Michelle's sister came to see me. She brought a photograph. Michelle had escaped Greg once and spent the rest of her short life trying to warn the next ones. She chose me that day in Kroger because she saw the way he watched me from the parking lot. Some people believe family means unconditional forgiveness. Those people have never had their husband bury a body in their backyard under the snow. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is what you choose when you have the power to destroy someone completely and you decide not to. I made that choice with my eyes open. I still go to the Sunrise Diner on Meridian. Booth 6, coffee black. Darlene still doesn't write the order down. The roses are still alive, though they grow in odd directions. I still talk to them sometimes. The snow has long since melted. The ground where the mound was has been dug up, examined, and put back. Grass grows there now. Every morning when I take that first step out of bed and the pain shoots through my hip like a bright wire, I think the same thing. I'm still here. The yard is mine. Key is mine. I'm still